why do you need adversity to be great? Say hello to my wife. I'm having what's known as a wardrobe malfunction. She is cutting my hair. This has been a dream of hers.
You've endeared me to your millions of viewers.
To humiliate me on the air.
I always cry even though it isn't allowed. So proud.
You make me want to be a better screamer.
A better screamer.
No, definitely not that. Do you need adversity to be great?
Your skill is you tee up your guests and you make them look, so good.
Yeah. Oh, such a good question. Gets me all fired up, man. Such a good interviewer. I'm ready to go. Jump to the screen. But no, so true.
They can't see I'm dancing by myself.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.
Well, hello, everyone. How are you today? What is today? Tuesday? Is it Tuesday? Minter is in the background. He's looking pensive. He's nodding cautiously. Yeah, it's Tuesday. Welcome to Corona TV. There is a lot to get through. That's why you saw this straight away. I'm going to get through some admin, some housekeeping for you. One is next week, I'm not going to be on Facebook. I'm going dark on Facebook because Facebook's going dark on me. So I will be doing it through my speaker page on Facebook, but I want to try and encourage all of you watching on Facebook to move on over, whether you're watching live or post-recorded, pre-recorded, whatever, post-fact. Come and watch us on YouTube, comment on YouTube, and let's see what that does in terms of engagement. So just a little bit, you have been forewarned. Yes, I'm talking a lot about the new Jaffe coin, the new crypto coin. I am trying to do some little experiential things, which is you first got to go to rally.io and you've got to buy some coin. And then you've got to use some of that coin. So you go to rally.io and you can actually find my creator page. Once you buy coin, you can use a credit card, or you could even use your own cryptocurrency and exchange it. I want to try and see how this translates, how this helps creators like myself monetize. It's a bit of an experiment, which I want to share with you. So you can send me even one coin, which I think is worth about 30 cents, and you will get a little shout out on the show. If you want something like a tweet-sized shout out, 25 coins, 100 coins or more, because you can always build in tipping. I will send you a autographed, personally signed copy of my latest book, Built to Suck. And if you want a 5-minute interview, which as far as I'm concerned, we could do live too, but something that you can use in your sizzle reel, a little Q&A, that will cost you 500 Jaffe coins, and only one of these available for the first person that responds. If you'd like a 15-minute Zoom mentoring, coaching, brainstorming session, whatever you want, I'll give you more time as well. And I'm only going to do one of them a week. All you've got to do is send me 100 Jaffe coins. Buy some coin, send me some coin, indicate in the comments thread, and we'll set it up. So let's see to what degree it works. And just be with me on this journey. It's kind of cool. David Libby is already on YouTube, so he has already made the transition, whereas Tom Morris is digging his heels in. He's the last guy on earth, the last guy on Facebook, but he's bah humbug. He's figuring out how to move it over. And I wonder if my mother will move over as well, but she is here today. She has not sent me any Jaffe coin yet, and she should know about coins because she is actually a coin dealer, so go figure. Today at 4 p.m., I will be doing my regular scheduled Pivoting the Reinvention of Brands, Careers, and Life, talking a lot about some of the themes that you have been familiar with on the show. Well, today is National Dr. Seuss Day, and I thought I would share with you 5 lessons from the one and only Dr. Seuss. Number 1, today you are you. That is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you, right? I said the other day, who knows me better than me? Number 2, why fit in when you were born to stand out? Number 3, you have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. Number 4, be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter and those who matter don't mind. And finally, number 5, today I shall behave as if this is the day I will be remembered. Thank you, Dr. Seuss, for those lessons. Thank you for Dr. Alison Escalante for yesterday's show. Thank you, Tom Martin, Tracy Lovett, for Wednesday and Thursday. And thank you, Minter Dial, for today. Minter Dial is an international professional speaker. He is an elevator and an author, and we will ask him what it means to be an elevator shortly. Happy birthday to my Facebook friends, Mark Fireman, previous guest on the show, Andy Sklar here in Westport, Connecticut, and finally on LinkedIn, we've got Rob Simmons, we've got Adam Zuckerman, Sukanta Besra. Happy birthday, all of you, and Mr. Paul Redwood, the greatest guy on earth, Mr. Paul Redwood. Hope you are having an amazing day. Thank you for everything that you do for me and have done for me and continue to do for me. He's done a lot of my website development. Very grateful to him. But today we're going to talk about hair, a lot of hair. It's going to be a common theme on the show today. Today is called Bad Hair Day. Has anyone ever had that in their lives? Look, we're all familiar with the phrase, right? Bad hair day. And get ready for several hair-raising puns and references because my guest today has fabulous hair. These days, isn't every day a bad hair day? I haven't put product in my hair in probably a year. Ironically, I think I met my guest today, Minter Dial, when he was working at L'Oreal in hair, but I digress. Is a bad hair day a bad thing, by the way? I mean, should we be dressing up, putting on makeup, or doing our hair for our daily barrage of Zoom calls, or even our quota of clubhouse rooms? Does it matter if our meetings are calls, just in audio, and no one is actually on camera? Are we dressing up for others or for ourselves? Now, I know Lauren Griffiths, previous guest, has a definite opinion on that, and she would subscribe to the WYSIWYG approach. What you see is what you get, which leads me to my next thought. These days, I don't really have bad hair days because every day is a bad hair day, but rather I have bad technology days. Technical difficulties in terms of memory capacity, slow or interrupted bandwidth on the literal interpretation of the phrase, but also figuratively the concept of a bad show. I've taken the position that there is no such thing as a bad guest. A bad show is on me. It's my fault. It's my task or challenge to bring out the best in every single person on this planet. If I just work hard enough and take enough care to find the magic or the spark. I get how impractical that is. Some people are just lower energy, and putting the onus on guests to be someone they're not is neither authentic nor realistic. Like yesterday's show about steering into the skid of depression, I've started leaning into the bad show. I need them. It's not for the bad, if not for the bad technology days, how on earth would I recognize and celebrate the good ones? How would I learn? How would I grow? How would I be able to course correct and mix things up? So the next time you're having a bad day, whether it's a hair, technology, business, or relationship related one, take a moment to pause and reflect on it. And first and foremost, forgive yourself. This is the self-compassion that we discussed yesterday. Then, and only then, use it to power you forward to bigger and even better things, because surely our best days are only ahead of us. Well, a person, as I said, that has just fabulous, fabulous hair, and a guy that is a positive guy, and we're going to be talking all about the incredible things that he's done, is my guest today, Mr. Minter Dial. Minter is an agent of change. He's a 3-time entrepreneur who has exercised 12 different professions, and that's exercise, not exorcised, 12 different professions, and moved country 15 times. Minter's core career stint of 16 years, as I mentioned, was spent as a top executive at L'Oreal, where he was a member of the worldwide executive committee for the professional products division. He's author of the World War II story, The Last Ring Home, a documentary film and book, as well as 3 business books, Future Proof and Artificial Empathy, and most recently, You Lead, that was released in January 2021. He's been host of the Minter Dialogue Weekly podcast in 2010. He's passionate about the Grateful Dead, so David Meerman Scott would approve, paddle tennis, languages, and generating meaningful conversations. Cat got my tongue today. It is time to bring him on, and I hope that we will have a meaningful conversation today. But first, watch this.
Welcome.
Life is full of surprises and change. In fact, that's what I live for.
Come on up. And if we are just about vanity metrics and getting eyeballs onto things like notifications that keep pinging, then we are going to continue to have mountain problems.
Est-ce que vous êtes prêts à passer le test du tatouage?
You guys want to play some more games? Yo-ho!
Oui. Welcome to the show, Mr. Minter Dial.
Bonjour, monsieur. Thank you very much, Joe.
I love that sizzle reel. You put a lot of effort and energy into it, and it is fairly obvious.
Thank you. I love your soliloquy and your chats about Dr. Zeus, and I couldn't help but think the cat ate your tongue, but maybe you have the hair of the dog to deal with as well.
Or the dog ate, or cat got my tongue, or the dog ate my homework. But indeed. So there is so much to discuss with you, but I thought we would have a little bit of fun. Normally I do my fun facts, and we're still going to do some fun facts. Only one fact about you that I found out. But first, I wanted to ask this question. What is it to be an elevator? You are an elevator. Like, this is all I could think of. This is my association of Minter Dial as an elevator. What does an elevator do?
Well, my objective is to be an elevator of debate and always elevate the debate. And so whenever I'm trying to, and basically in every conversation, my hope is to bring an uplifting element to it. Of course, every elevator must come down, but this is my hope. And the crazy idea that the reason why I got to this elevator is that I like to read the signs, like the signs in the tea bags. And one day I was doing a run in Charleston, South Carolina, and I ran over a sign that was on its back. So I couldn't see what was underneath it. So I was on my jog, and I decided to run back, turn over the sign, and there it was. It was an elevator sign on the ground in South Carolina. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is me. And that's how I became the elevator.
Isn't it? That's incredible. And by the way, I was thinking, I didn't even think about the fact that the elevator goes down. All I thought of is elevation and being an elevator, and this idea of going up, of, upgrading, uplifting, supersizing. That's all I could think of. And maybe that's the new optimist versus pessimist, right? The pessimist believes the elevator goes down, and the optimist is all about, ascending to and transcending, if you will, to a higher level.
Yeah, I love it. So, no longer the glass half full, glass half empty, elevator going up, going down.
Unless it's like, I don't know, James and the glass elevator, and then the elevator can do many things and go in many, many different directions. But I think elevation is important in general. And I'm actually going to maybe start using that a little bit more often. Instead of being a motivational speaker, maybe I'm going to become an elevational speaker. Does that even make sense? An elevation speaker?
Elevatorial. It may be sartorial.
Yeah, is that like an advertorial? Now I'm getting into Elven. And by the way, the bad hair in the background looks like an elf. But anyway, we digress. Speaking of bad hair, though, I actually, believe it or not, found this. Here's something else that I found. that there's actually I guess a website called Captionsgram, and there you can just go there for hair quotes captions for Instagram. Did you know that there is a place to get like really cool captions for your Instagram posts?
Should be something that L'Oreal is sponsoring.
I'm telling you, there's an opportunity, a blast from the past. I'm looking. Well, we've got a year Charleston, from Stephen Rubin, who's watching, and now Tom Morris. He's actually made, I guess, the trip now to YouTube. But he's busy saying, and look, I can actually see a nice little image of him. He's saying, "Has Joseph put me in an isolation chat room?" No, sir. So I think he likes the Facebook chat because he can talk amongst the others that are on Facebook. It's going to take a while to get everyone over, but I will acknowledge you, Tom. Thank you for moving over to YouTube. And he says, a friend of mine, chairman of Commonwealth Financial, recently published a great book called Elevate about the spirit of business. So we will be talking about spirit, but first, the elevator has to go down and we have to talk about a dark day, a moment in your life, Minter, when you finally realized that professional tennis was not for you. You were thumped 6-1 by Bonnie. How do you say it? Gadusek?
Kadusek. Yeah.
So the US pro tennis player ranked 16th in the world, I guess, at the time. 6-1, the end of my delusions as a decent tennis player. Sorry to hear it, but it must have been pretty cool to play her.
Well, I was surrounded by lots of good players, and we just over a drink we said, "Oh, well, let's play tomorrow." And it was around the time of the the different battles of the sexes, with Riggs, who played the Australian woman Margaret Court, and then played Billie Jean King. So there's been 4 different battles of the sexes. This one was a distinct victory for women, as was the Billie Jean King one, of course.
Funnily enough, a little story about me, which is the first time I played my wife tennis, and she was, a state champion or the equivalent, a provincial champion in South Africa. First time we played, she beat me 6-love. And I think she thought that maybe I was trying to let her win, but I was playing as hard as I possibly can, and she destroyed me, but I guess it worked out well. But I had a similar experience. That wasn't a battle of the sexes. That was, a battle for the ages, and because it's lasted since. So anyway, enough about tennis and about hair. We're here today to talk about the lost art of conversation, about the tyranny of lovely ideas, pretty much about anything that you want to talk about. Minter, I mean, I met you. You were a corporate executive with beautiful hair, working for in the hair division. But you've done so much since. Before we get into your topics, let's talk a little bit about your journey. From corporate executive, you could have stayed on that track, on that road. You could have just continued to navigate your way through the political and the functional corporate hallways, but you've just gone off on this beautiful journey and adventure, and I would love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Well, thanks, Joe. So I was in L'Oreal for 16 years, and that decision was made for me in some regards, because I said, well, if I'm to stay corporate, I only could think of one job I wanted. So I wrote a 3-paragraph handwritten letter to the man who owned Harrods at the time. And I said, I want to be the man who brings back Harrods to the highest level. And so that didn't work out, because he ended up selling Harrods. And I was like, all right, if I'm not going to do that, then I need to be doing this elsewhere. And I've always thought of myself as someone, a little bit of an adventurer, a voyager, never great at anything, but loved touching lots of things. I mean, I was actually a teaching tennis pro in my youth. I worked at a zoo, an aquarium. I started the travel agency for musicians. So I've had this sort of gangly, raggle-taggle series of things that I've done. And I wanted to continue to pursue that. I enjoy bringing the flavors that I've learned in other places into other businesses. And naturally, I also wanted to learn to be more myself. And there's an expression I like to say, as you mentioned, the Grateful Dead. I was used to wearing the tie and then ripping it off to wear the tie-dye by night. And I felt like, all right, enough of this ripping off. I'd like to wear the tie-dye in my work as me. And so this was my need as I left L'Oreal, to be more me, to lean into allowing the you are you, as Dr. Zeus might say.
I mean, isn't that appropriate, this idea of finding yourself? And we'll talk about the book, because that's what the book talks about, this authentic leadership angle, if you will. But there are two things from what you said that I want to touch on. The first is, it's a very interesting statement you made. And as I often say on the show, when you've done 212 of them, by the way, nice that you're number 212, the New York area code. That's a cool one. You've spent enough time in New York in your life.
Totally.
But you said something that really, really struck me. You said, I was never great at anything, but I love touching many things. And I thought to myself, okay, that's interesting. He just said, he's not a jack of all trades. He's like, I'm not a jack at any trade, but you're a master. There's something interesting about what you said, because clearly, you are good at something. You are good at being, you're good at being not great at anything, but good at many things. You are a generalist. You are a collector and a connector of all these disparate, disjointed, maybe experiences that you are able to connect and also group in unique ways. So there is something great in not being great. Did I get too kind of out there? Did that make sense? When people say, by the way, they say something rambling and ridiculous, and they go, does that make sense? And everyone goes, yes, but what they really want to say is no. But seriously, did that make sense?
Well, and yes, it does, Joe. Well, for me anyway, because the fact is that when you are really good at something, you end up with a big head about, this is your zone of expertise. And I think that in a very changing world, the more interesting ideas that we can fill up everywhere all the time. And it gives us a constant level of curiosity. The issue, of course, is at some level, as I write, is if you're only curious, then you never do anything. So you've got to move away from just curiosity and learning to doing stuff. And I'm a big fan of bringing in people like sociologists and anthropologists into work, because they connect the dots that when we're brought up and really sculpted in a business mind, we can get real tunnel vision. And bringing those types of different wonky literary backgrounds, I say wonky because usually they're regarded as such, but I think they're really valuable, enabling us to connect those dots and see things differently instead of just tunnel vision. I'm the expert in hair.
We've got so many interesting comments. Tom says, there is a rare form of human greatness that doesn't consist in maxing out in one niche. And Carla Johnson is here, and she said, Minter Dahl is absolutely brilliant. I'm very much a fan of his new book, You Lead. Of course, Carla is going to be back talking about her new book, and she is a friend and previous guest of the show as well.
Thank you, Carla.
I think it was Tamsin Webster. I think it was Tamsin on the Friday show, and she said, well, I'm going to give her credit to it anyway. And she said, the people that are the worst at change are experts. She said something like that, and maybe someone will correct me watching in terms of the right quote and the attribution. But the people that are the worst at change or going through change are in fact experts, maybe because of that big head, the big head and the bad hair, maybe, that you were talking about there, Minter. Isn't that an interesting concept, right? Which is we spend our whole lives trying to be perfect and become experts, subject matter experts, but that can actually be our undoing or our Achilles heel.
When you were talking before in your soliloquy about the experiences and the ability to have good day, bad days, and I was thinking so much about the notion of experiences, and when you go to see a concert, whether it's the Grateful Dead, I'll allow you can see someone else. You really are looking for that experience, right? And that experience will involve you maybe going and meeting somebody serendipitously to buy a beer, the time that Mick Jagger tripped on the stage, and you're going to talk about that moment of imperfection, or weirdness, the unexpected, the unique elements that can only happen in an experience which will have imperfections in it. And so what I loved about the Dead was always going to see, and some days they just were bad. They just were bad, and everyone knew it, but we still had a good time because we were within the community and we knew that was part of the gig. So otherwise, we're in this constant mode of expecting a perfection. And when you're really good at something, then of course you'll want to get even better. And in some businesses, if it's getting to the moon, rather, there's some things you've really got to be good at. Surgery, obviously. But I think today's world, where we are going to be hit by yet another technology tomorrow, whether it's Clubhouse 2 or whatever coming tomorrow, we've got to get ready to shift gears, bring it on, figure it out, not perfectly, but enough to figure out how we can possibly integrate it or not into the future.
Now, it's very interesting to me because Tom Morris has gone back to Facebook for some reason. He got cold feet, but he said hubris, arrogance, closed-mindedness, the bane of modernity and modern business. What I want to do is I want to go back to what you just said, which is in the green room, in the cyber green room, and we were talking about the fifth wall and breaking down the fifth wall, and we'll get to that, which is really great conversations happen when you least expect them to, and in the most unexpected situations. But then I was thinking about how many times have you been to a concert and the singer forgets the words or totally messes up, and they basically turn around and just swear, and they have a moment of just a human moment, and the crowd goes wild. It's the same thing like when you're on Broadway or SNL, and they break into hysterics and the giggles. That's what we want. That's what we need. Because we see them as human, just and flawed and imperfect like us. But that is kind of this idea of that's what becomes memorable. It is those little slip-ups, as opposed to the Dead delivered a perfect, blemish-free performance.
Not going to happen. Joel, if you'll allow me, I'd like to tell you a little story that really...
You're allowed to do whatever you want. This is your show.
I appreciate it. Thank you, indulging me. So this is an experience that I had that really woke me up to exactly what you're talking about. So I was at a press launch, and it was in a really hot place in Soho Club in London. And there were about 80 people, big wigs, well-known people, press. And as I was speaking, I felt an emotion come up in me. And I was so stressed about this particular experience, I ended up crying. And I felt the tears, and so I tried to wipe away. I was like underneath, I had my glasses, I was trying to wipe them away, but that didn't exactly, I couldn't hide it as it started to come along. And all of a sudden I started sobbing. I mean, I don't know where it came from. And all I was doing was say, oh God, I'm so sorry. I can't believe, oh really, I'm embarrassed. And then somebody started clapping. And that clapping allowed me to gather myself. And again, I was apologizing, and I was like, I'm really sorry. This is not what I was planning. Obviously I didn't want to be doing like this. And then I let's say I recollected myself, and I continued on to get back to what I was supposed to be doing. And then at the end, I was like, I'm so sorry again for what happened, Anyway, they applauded me. And here's what happened at the end. A bunch of people left because they had other things to do, and so be it. Maybe they were too embarrassed, they didn't like it, so that's fine. But then a bunch of people, like a large group, including the most popular, well-known people in the room, came up to me and either felt the need to hug me, shake my hands, and what I realized was that in this moment of breaking down, they didn't feel less of me. In fact, I think that for so many more of them, they connected in with me and thought higher, better of me as a result. And that was the first time I'd done it in that kind of an event. I was not that kind of person. I was brought up boarding school, stiff upper lip, and and we can carry on, bravado. But God, was that an amazing learning experience, because I got over it. I wasn't embarrassed about it afterwards. I felt, oh, okay. It's okay to feel bad. It's okay to show emotions. And so that experience really taught me, Minter, after 50 years, that it's okay to be vulnerable, to show true emotions. And I even still get feelings within me as I think back to that particular moment.
It's so funny, and I actually there is a book idea, by the way. You're welcome if you're going to end up writing it, or maybe we'll write it together. And I think the book should just be called The Fifth Wall, right? A business book that is about breaking down that fifth wall and recognizing now. I mean, it is 50% of that book is about COVID and this hybrid existence, but 50% of it is timeless and is ultimately about the fact that we have been forced and taught and conditioned to check ourselves at the door and become something either we're not or resist the ability to be something we are. And the reality is, you are you and me is me. And I think it's just, here's the quote of the episode for you, Minter. And you don't have to determine who said it because it's kind of obvious who said it, but I think it captures everything. Interviewer: Frank, you have long hair. Does that make you a woman? Frank Zappa: you have a wooden leg. Does that make you a table? So there you go. There you go. Would you like to add anything to Frank Zappa?
Well, I'm a big fan of Joe's Garage. You were talking about conversations where they come up in unexpected moments. I've talked to many therapists how actually the closing minutes of the therapy session is actually where things happen. It's where the magic is. I'm getting up. Oh, listen, Joe, thank you for having me. Listen, how do I pay? Oh, there's one other thing. And that is the drop. That's where the thing that happens, the big change experience unexpectedly, because the tension's off. I'm in another mode, and all of a sudden, so maybe that's also the fifth wall as well.
Well, let's build on that. Let's stay with that, because that talks about what we were saying. I'll give you a couple of scenarios. Scenario one: how many times has this happened? You and I will be in the corridor at a conference or at a corporate event. I think a couple times I came to speak to the folks over at L'Oreal in New York, and we'll be having a conversation. And as a creator myself, I'll turn around and go, man, I wish I was recording this, because this is gold, Jerry. This is gold. I want to share this. But in doing that also, I think inherently I've always known, and if I didn't, I know it now, that would have also destroyed the conversation. The other thing, and we experienced this on our Zoom after show, is it's right at the end, to your point, when we stop the recording and we're about to say goodbye, and one person just adds one more thing, and we're like, here's a third use case. When I've done, in my olden pre-pandemic days of consulting and doing focus groups and doing qualitative interviews, it's when you stop the recording that suddenly the executive you're talking to either starts to be themselves or just flourishes and opens up. And I'm not necessarily saying it's because you're not recording anymore, but it's those dying moments of conversation that the real magic comes out.
So I have two stories to say about this. One is when you have a specific timeline to your conversation, that tends to crimp the power of it. Because if you know that we're only speaking for 30 minutes, I'm going to need to jump in and tell you stuff, and I've got to get my agenda over. Minter's got to do these talking points, especially in these interviews, you can have the talking points A, B, and C, and I got to jump them in. I'm going to fit them in anyway. I don't care what you ask me. Is it a sunny day in London? Well, let me tell you talking point A. How do you feel today? Let me tell you talking point B. Nothing to do with what you're asking. And so if you have a time limit, this can crimp the ability to have a more powerful conversation. The second one is I do empathy circles. And these are structured dialogues that take 2 hours and usually up to 5 people digitally done. And what's amazing is it's in the second hour that the shit happens, the magic happens. Because the first hour, we're telling everything that we already had planned with regard to the topic. But in the second hour, we're out of juice. Usually I'm trying to take a topic where no one's an expert. And so you're only having to listen to everybody else. And then you get these much more deep connections with one another that happen when you have the time to listen. Anyway, that's two elements that I feel are interesting about how we could allow ourselves to have stronger conversations. Yeah, nice picture.
So I just pasted or posted, same thing, this article that you wrote called The Art of Conversation, The Lost Art of Conversation. And I mention it that way because there are 2 points. One is that it is an art, and two is the lost part. So maybe you can expand a little bit on this idea. And I think, to quote you, you said, the lost art of conversation and meaningful debate on more diverse topics where we are able to raise more controversial issues. So I'd love for you to set that up, and then we can continue this conversation, which hopefully is more art and less lost.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there's a science of conversation as well, but I think that we need to add more beauty and more art into our lives, which means being less rigid about time, which is part of the science side of things. And the art is more little amorphous and able to talk maybe off topic, go down rabbit holes, be serendipitous. And that's part of the art as well. For me, I've seen in my echo chambers anyway, I do my level best to make sure I'm listening to all types of people, but I see how easy it is, and sometimes just facile intellectually, just to listen to people talking about things that I agree with. It's like, oh, relaxed, cool, got it. And I can chime in, it's easy. But being able to listen to people who have an opinion about something you hold dearly that's different, it takes a whole level of understanding of yourself and an ability to listen without needing to interrupt and say, you're wrong, Joe, I'm right. Where we're in an adversarial role, no longer listening. All I'm thinking about is what I've got to say to you. And so you can speak, but I'm going to cut you off. Or as soon as you finish speaking, I'm going to tell you what I was planning to say anyway. So I feel like we need to learn how to listen again, which really means that we need to add in time to our conversations. Because if everything is about a speed date, then we will not have meaningful conversation.
It's so interesting how time is the constant here, and how you've decided to associate time with science, whereas I guess timeless might be maybe gravitating towards art. And yet there's also this tension between structure, too much versus too little. And you need some, it's important. Maybe we call those guardrails, right? Guidelines and guardrails, something that the brand marketing world knows only too well. But I guess where we can, the real magic is to make sure that they are, shall we say, suggested, right? Suggested, as opposed to rules. They're more like, here are some suggestions, some ideas, some thought starters. Do with them as you wish or as you will, and then proceed. And I will add one thing. I mean, the book I wrote, Join the Conversation, and I defined conversation in that book as between two or more sides, not two or more people, because, and it didn't necessarily mean, red versus blue, Democrat versus Republican, right versus wrong, which is subjective. It was about perspective and the diversity of that perspective, which to me was real conversation.
It strikes me when we're trying to have these two sides, that if you're not aware of yourself enough, what that means is that you'll be fooled by your triggers. And you'll end up feeling an energy that's needing to dominate. Your limbic system kicks in. I'm not going to be in a more connective mode. My rapport is going to be happening through the neocortex, right? So, or at least the frontal cortex. And if I can listen in deeply and not worry about me or have issues that I haven't dealt with in me, then I'm better able to listen to you if I'm present with myself. And so this idea of being the you or you, I think, is also really relevant when you're dealing with a conflicting type of argument. Because then you need to listen to yourself, your heartbeat, you understand that you're getting pissed off, you're getting upset. Well, then just dial it in, understand it, be aware of yourself, and that'll help you get through and be more, let's say, moderate when you're listening to the other person.
I think this concept of being fooled by your triggers is just, I mean, it is so terrific. It is so rich, this concept, because really, you're allowing yourself to be fooled by your triggers. You are the fool when you are fooled by your triggers. But actually knowing what they are in advance and then being fooled by them is even worse. When you actually fall into the trap that essentially you've set for yourself, right?
Well, no one's perfect.
No.
And the reality is we also need to feel passion, Joe. We need to feel that also gives us meaningfulness, right? And so if I have a topic and, let's say a supports team that you like, you need to feel you lost with them, you won with them. Because if nothing matters anymore and you don't really care about anything anymore, that's not good either. So at some level, this is not a perfect thing. That's why it's an art, and there's no ability to script how it's supposed to be. So I need to feel passion and drive it but then dial it back at other times. And no one gets that right. I wrote a book on empathy. You wrote the book on conversations, but I certainly don't get empathy right all the time. I mean, my wife will be the first to call me out when I'm not being empathic, despite the fact that I've written a book on it. And I kind of know a lot about it. But that doesn't mean I execute perfectly all the time.
Yeah, you set yourself up with that one. But the point of or moment of contention in my home right now is actually the beard. And Tom says, Joseph's beard is starting to look like, oh, brother, where art thou, bordering on deliverance? Just an observation. But then, he comes back.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, that is not the official theme music, by the way, for Corona TV. But then he does say that I am quickly becoming one of his favorite philosophers, which is, and he is a philosopher. And it's not just the beard, those remarks on time and structure gold. I think actually those were Minter's comments as well. I will give you one more, Tom Morris. He said, in the geometry of 3D figures, sides aren't always opposed, but often connected, yet still different. Long live les différences.
Vive la différence.
And David says, I feel like a bobblehead. All I'm doing today is nodding. So, welcome to the show, David Libby. Minter, before we get into your new book, let's bring this home and put a nice little bow, because in this article that I've shared as well, you talk about practicing empathy. You talk about reinventing the salon. You even bring it into context of work environments, and you even talk about the undoing of conversation. So talk a little bit about how we can essentially, use all of this to rediscover and embrace this lost art.
Well, one of the great things to do is actually reformulate. Rather than feel like I need to add into what you just said, reformulate back what you just said. So, Joe, you were just telling me about the article I wrote and the fact that it's lost and the undoing a conversation. So I need to do it in a way where I'm not exactly saying the same thing you are, but I'm showing you that sometimes there are things which break into allowing for conversations to happen. And Minter, how would you like to discuss that? So I'm reformulating back. So in the very process of reformulating, two things happen. The first is I'm showing you that I'm listening. We're connecting. Even if I agree or disagree with whatever you're saying, all I'm doing is I'm making you aware that I understood what you said. And it's absolutely valid to be doing this at a dinner table, in a boardroom. We don't always need to be accretive in everything we're saying. Because the second thing that's beautiful is when I reformulate back in an intelligent, astute way, you, the sayer of what you say, understand better what you said and have something already bouncing back off of that. And so I feel like that's one of a really great skill to bring back into the way we communicate, as opposed to needing to say, well, on top of what you said, and here's another thing, which is also great, by the way. I mean, that's a fine thing, especially in brainstorming. And there's a real power in reformulating what we hear. We don't do it enough. And I think that would be a skill that I'd like to see brought back in many more cases. And I do it occasionally, and I marvel at how the other person doesn't realize that I'm reformulating. My little monkey brain says, "Oh, Joe's going to realize I'm reformulating." It feels like I'm reformulating, and he's going to see that. Joe doesn't think that for a second when you do it properly.
Yes, and no, I'm kidding. But I think yes, and is actually the mechanical. It's as Dr. Evil would say, throw me a frickin' bone. I mean, that's what it is. It's the ability to throw a scrap out and acknowledge. But I think there are two things going on. One is the importance of acknowledgement and validation. You are valuable. What you just said matters and counts. But then there's a second part. You call it this idea of reformulate. I call it reframe. And what I love to do is connect the dots and be able to put it all together. And actually part of my own growth, even through the show, has been the fact that I don't prepare questions, and that, it's as simple as, today there were two things you wanted to discuss. We probably won't even get to the second one because we don't need to, because we're having a real conversation. And in doing so, we're actually finding out things about ourselves and insights that we didn't know coming into this. At least I certainly am. And so that's how I look at it as well. But it is an art to actually listen and hear and realize that if you haven't formulated your next question just yet, there might be just a few awkward moments of silence, and that's okay too.
100%. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I've been trying in my versions of my podcast actually not to ask questions, but just to bounce off what I'm hearing. Not necessarily a reformulating way, maybe like what you're saying, more like a reframing way, because I think reframing does bring in more of my interpretation. That's the way I interpret the word reframing versus reformulating. The way I talk about reformulating is to restate what you said in a different way, such that you know that I understand what you said. That's what I mean by reformulating. That's really the purpose of reformulation. When I do these empathy circles and when I do my interviews, and I'm just commenting on the comment that you make, it's a really interesting technique for a conversation as opposed to an interview.
I think it's an interesting segue to the book, because as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, leaders today, and poor leaders and inadequate leaders and stuck leaders, if you will, are leaders that will talk over, that are, old-fashioned, if you will. And I wonder how much of leadership right now, effective leadership, is doing that, is being able to, it's more than empathy, Minter. It's the ability to say, the people that are talking in this business setting may not be as old as I am, they may not be as senior as I am, and they may not be as white and male as I am too, to be very explicit. And how important it is for an empathic leader, an effective leader, an evolved leader, to do exactly what you're saying. The reframe, the reformulation, the validation, especially amongst people that are not in the C-suite, right? in the L'Oreal boardroom or whatever the case may be?
Well, I think that it's many people get the idea, but the issue is execution. I've read and I've done a number of surveys around the existence of empathy in business. And pretty much any CEO with a head on his or her shoulder understands that empathy is useful in business. But the vast majority of people, employees, believe that their bosses are not empathic. Most companies, the customers struggle to believe that their companies are being empathic in their customer service with them. And so there's a real breakdown between what we think we can do, what we think we should do, and how we execute. And for me, the single biggest issue, which I mentioned earlier, which is our inability to manage our time sufficiently. What I mean by manage is to allow the time for that, which means allowing for the chaos, allowing for the messiness, and allowing for somebody to just need to tell you something that you didn't plan for. So that means you have to stop having back-to-back meetings all day long where you have only the time to go pee. And you wonder how things break down. Well, of course they will, because you're not allowing for humanity. You're not allowing for serendipity. You're not allowing for chance. And you're certainly not allowing for listening. Any CEO, I mean, this is how I used to operate when I was at the highest levels at L'Oreal. I had 50% of every day not booked. This allowed me to be more strategic when I was thinking about my stuff, but it also allowed for, hey, listen, I'm going to go out to store visit. I could do weird shit and allow for other things to happen. Of course, that didn't happen every day, but my assistant usually guarded my agenda religiously, and it's a remarkable thing when you allow yourself the time to listen, to ask open questions, and you learn so much more. And the other problem, which is even more exacerbated in the pandemic, is isolation. The boss is already isolated in general. We tell him or her what we think they want to hear as the employees or the people underneath. And so they're inevitably isolated or distanced from the realities. So now we're remote work, there's even more distance from, you were talking about the boss who's going to be leaning into the other people who have different experiences. Well, the boss got 2 houses, 3.4 kids, a Lamborghini, a boathouse. Yeah, their existence is so radically different from the employees, but they're very far removed from it. So it's very hard for them, even with the Zoom camera, to really understand the torment and the difficulties that people are having to achieve things. So you need to especially be much more intentional when you're working remote to allow for coffee time, or water cooler time, or whatever you want to call it, per your culture, beer time, South Africa.
I mean, I enjoy that too, the beer time. Although these days, a little, I've cut down for those people that have been watching from half a bottle of red wine to 1 glass of red wine. I am looking at this comment and trying to just let's look at this comment and find and understand it. It says, you've moved on. What about restructuring by establishing a framework for 2+ inputs to work on a combined outcome or solution?
So if I understand that, when I look at doing these empathy circles, which are structured dialogues over 2 hours, inevitably people come to it, and I'm always looking for diverse opinions. And by just reformulating back, you're showing understanding and connecting in, but it doesn't mean that the other person then needs to acquiesce. Then I've listened to you, I understand your position, now let me talk about mine. Now you need to reformulate back what I'm hearing. And that very notion of connection in reformulation feels like you end up with not a compromise, but a reformulation, a restructuring of certain ideas. Anyway, accretive to what you came in with at the beginning. That's my thought.
I see it now. Thank you, Green Mugger. I didn't get it initially, and sometimes it's really hard to multitask. So there's the reformulate one. 2 is reframe, and 3 is restructure. Of course, that is a very loaded word, restructuring, in corporate circles. So don't give them any, don't encourage them. They're bad actors. They behave badly. Do not encourage the restructure. I want to
just like if I could say that just what just happened is exactly good listening. First of all, you reformulated, you reframed, you put everything back on it was right there. We're making it happen. And then thanks to the third person, and I can't remember the muggy, whatever the name was, he brought in Green Mugger, brought in restructure, which was accretive, additional, and it makes it really interesting, that kind of texture. And I'm feeling like I'm learning something, moving on from reformulating to reframing to restructuring.
Do you realize that we're actually writing this book? This book will be written. We just have to do a transcription. The fifth wall has 3 sections, right? Section 1 is reformulate, section 2 is reframe, and section 3 is restructure. And Green Mugger, you are the co-author now as well. So now we have 3 authors. It's this beautiful work in progress. Minter, before we get to, there's so many things that I still want to be able to talk to you about, and I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to share some of the great things you're working on and get to our Corona question. But I just wanted to go back and emphasize this really important point about not booking back-to-back meetings. How many times have we been in meetings when they go, and we're coming up on the hour, right? And we're coming up in 30 minutes. Who cares? Like, why is that even a problem if you're coming up on the arbitrary, contrived, stupid, time limit? That's exactly your point. It's because of those back-to-back meetings. And I think what we really have to do is figure out, for every 30 minutes of meetings, you need 30 minutes of non-meetings. And if you run over, great. That obviously means that, maybe you manage your time really well by not managing it all. So I just wanted to state that. But Minter, in addition to these books that you've written, chat a little bit about, or just briefly tell us about The Last Ring Home. And while you're doing that, I will start to put up some of the wonderful links and some of the things you're doing, because, there's a screening coming up, quite frankly, tomorrow.
That's right. So in the end of the day, I have to rewrite history some level, because I wrote You Lead, You Lead, which is all about really being self-aware and understanding yourself. And I happened to write a biography about my grandfather, after whom I was named. And it just now, the script I'm rewriting, which is I really actually did work on me first. And in 25 years of researching the man after whom I was named, who was killed in the Second World War, I discovered me. I discovered what I felt was important at a much deeper, granular level than I had previously thought. Intellectually, we all think we know each other. But then I really dug in and really understood through specifically interviewing 130 people who had been in the Second World War, veterans who knew my grandfather, knew my grandmother, some of them, and had been through real shit. And it made me realize just how lucky we are to be living in the world we're living today. And the little problems that we make mountains of, whereas these people not only sacrifice so much, we owe our liberties today to them. So I want to, behind this film, which is every Memorial Day is usually on PBS in the United States. It's got life or timeless values, in my opinion, which are love, courage, and honor. And encourage to have the courage to say what's truthful, to have the courage to lead by example, and to strive to elevate the debate. That's really how I came into who I am. So the Last Ring Home is just a half an hour documentary film. It's also about how men don't talk about emotions, father-son relationships, which for me was so important. Obviously, to my father who didn't have a father, what happens when the father doesn't come home? And then how incredible it is to have a true love, and what that does for you in your life. And anyway, so that's what the film and the book are about. And I'm so happy, really delighted when people are interested in the story, and the people who send me messages once they read the book. It's so that is uplifting.
And I put a link for people that want to register for the screening, which is going to be tomorrow. And they can. It's virtual, hybrid.
It's virtual. Yeah, it's virtual. It's at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It'll be, so I'm going to do a little talk beforehand, little setup. I've also got a wounded veteran, a guy called Ed Jennings, who's going to be the host, because it's in supporting wounded veterans. The similar one in the States is Wounded Warriors. And so that's a big cause. It's important for me. Then the screening of the film, and then I'm going to talk and invite some of the people who are coming, because I have some pretty cool guests coming too.
So maybe for those of you looking to attend our Zoom after show tomorrow at 1, you are excused. You have a hall pass to go instead to the screening. Mint and I are going to be going over to the Zoom after show in just a couple minutes. There's one more thing that I wanted to make sure, in addition to obviously purchasing You Lead, how being yourself makes you a better leader. This is kind of cool. You're just doing an event on Thursday. It's a free event. It's a come hang with Minter event to inspire, inject energy, and make new forms of connections. And people can do that by just registering on that link. Is that correct?
That's right. Thank you so much, Joe, for bringing that up.
All right. So in addition to the screening, in addition to the hangout, in addition to the book, please connect with Minter. Find out more about what he's up to, what he's doing at minterdial.com. Of course, you can connect with him on Twitter and Instagram. What I really did love as well is that even your sizzle reel has a mixture of virtual and real to kind of see you in action. Minter, in our last 30 seconds, describe a good day in your life.
Good day starts with meditation and a really good set of stretching, where I'm feeling my body, feeling me, feeling my age sometimes. I love ending every day with a good glass of Scotch whiskey and 30 minutes of playing my Taylor guitar. And hopefully I'm singing well, and my wife appreciates that. And that's how I like to bookend pretty much every day, and make sure I started off well and end it well. And ideally I have a lovely little session with my wife. We chat and reconnect at the end of every day as well.
It sounds like a good day, specifically because there is Scotch involved. I have my Fender shirt on just for you today. But for me, I would say a good day. There you go.
Jerry Garcia.
I mean, did it even need to be said? Today, in my opinion, was a good day. Chuck Norris thinks so as well. Let's head on over to the Zoom after show.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
See you guys tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at coronatv.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.